Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Cognition Ignition. Today I'm going to be sharing some slides that I've created. I use them when I coach. I use them when I coach my employees, when I work with my patients in mental health, and just anyone that I work with on typology. What I try to do with this is look at the dynamics of typing and understand that there are many different pathways people can take in their development journey. I also try to look at some of the stages of life, which I'm going to share in this video. Before I get started, just want to remind you guys to like and subscribe if this video helps you in any way. There will be more content coming. I go all over the place, but it all has to do with living your best life and building your site to a healthy level of maturity. So let's get into this. We're going to be going over some quadras. This is something that I use from socionics, but it's pretty universal. When I think of quadras, what I think about is brainwaves, because in neuroscience, when we look at brainwaves, they're usually labeled similarly to how the quadras are represented in type. So I'm going to pull this up for you. Basically, there are 5 brainwaves that are recognized, and there are 4 quadras that we recognize in type. I do believe that this can be more precise when there's more data, but still collecting data through brain imaging isn't the easiest thing to do, though we can go over what gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta waves are and what they're doing when somebody has them as their dominant way of operating. They correlate to functions being used, introversion and extroversion, so attitudes as well. So when somebody is in the gamma quadra, what you're often going to see is somebody who is externally concentrated on problem solving. So what we see is fast moving waves. This is because there's a lot of in and out. This also has to do with extroverted sensation. A way to represent extroverted sensation in neuroscience is as a ball bouncing off its environment, coming back and being processed. And we also have the beta quadra, which is more internally focused and thoughtful minded. We will see a lot of introverted sensation from this quadra. So we can also relate that to being internally focused and thinking about the practical needs that are needed. These are a little bit slower waves. It's because they aren't bouncing as fast back and forth with the external environment. Now we also have alpha waves, which reflect a state of awareness. In the alpha quadra, you have a lot of TI and SI going on, which I'm going to pull up in other slides as well. You also have the theta, which is active, dreaming, and trance-like state, which is one thing. I think theta and delta waves are very similar. And I don't think there's as much research on that so much from what I have found. So we won't go too much into it, but we can assume that these have to do more with introverted intuiting process. So more about, it's similar to beta where it's internal, but it is not so thoughtful in its internal analysis, which is why like NI is known more as like a simulation. It just pieces things together. It pieces the sensory data points gathered from extroverted sensation together. So that's what we see with brainwaves. Now, if we go to the quadras, what I'm going to do is so again, we have the quadras represented by the types. With alpha, you have INTP, ESFJ, ENTP, and ISFJ. And what you're going to see here is that all of these types share the same 4 functions. The same polarity for judging, the same polarity for perceiving. Same thing with all of these types, the betas, the gammas, and the deltas. Based on the quadra they're in, you can identify which functions they are using. You cannot necessarily identify which order the function is using, which order the functions are being used until you identify the type specifically. But just by understanding certain types are going to show up certain ways because they have certain brain waves that they are more likely using. So I kind of want to go over some of the development things that you can track through this, which I would use this. All right, so what I see a lot of times is that often your first, whatever quadra you are in, based on your type, is probably your baseline functioning. You have your baseline polarities. So what we see here is the TIFE polarity, and then SINE for the alpha, and you can work your way around through beta, delta, and gamma again. But what I have found is that you can also track different states that you will find these types. So if we look down at the delta and gamma quadras, you will see that the two introverted functions make up a default mode, where for the two extroverted functions, you can track the task mode. And in business, this is something that I tracked a lot in construction. Usually it was pretty quick. Once somebody got to work, you could understand what they were doing when they were extroverting. T and SE is very quick to move through a process, where something like FI and SI is a lot slower to move through a process, because SE and TE are really working to what is in front of them, where FI and SI is trying to pick up more of the details in that. Then you can even see the difference between TE and SE and TE and NE when somebody is looking for more details. So the beta quadra, when they're looking for more details, they're going to do more of the NE behavior. So asking a lot of questions, trying to figure out the correct way to do something. I'm not saying that gamma doesn't do things correctly, but they are quicker to do things. And oftentimes what I think is, we won't go cross quadra yet, but we will go vertically and horizontally, that you will see a lot of confrontation between the types that are not cross quadra. So gammas may have a lot of confrontation, not necessarily confrontation, but disagreement with the way that betas or deltas do things. At the same time, I do believe that when you go to, when you interact with somebody from the vertical or horizontal quadra, that you have a great opportunity for growth, because they are actually perceiving and perceiving or judging differently than yourself. What you'll see is, like with beta, they have the same decision-making axes as the gammas, but their way of perceiving is actually different. So if they can actually learn to work together, probably through their decision-making function, they will both be able to gain insight and develop through the other type. You can also identify the common polarities for each quadra. I'm going to move through this a little bit. So back to baseline right now. So we'll look at the alpha quadra, and what you'll see is that I think the first path of development is to be able to mirror the type within a quadra. So INTPs would mirror ESFJs, and ENTPs would mirror ISFJs. They have the exact same functioning in a reverse order. And you can go through all the quadras again, and you can understand that that's the first merging of opposites. It's the ability to use your entire function stack. There's no real shadow work at this point. It's pretty much just, these are the functions that you were born with. These are where you are baseline, and where you are going to prefer to put your energy towards development early in life. Now, I do think that does change at some time, and really where you try to develop is not horizontally or vertically, it's cross quadra, and I'm going to show you why. So when you develop cross quadra, I call it cross axial, it's a positive integration of opposing attitudes to balance negative or neutral effects of the conscious attitude. This may be initiated in stressful conditions, which normally sufficient functions do not provide a positive outcome for. So when you have learned to mirror already, then there's going to come a point where you realize that even using your mirror processes are not enough to allow you to develop the way that you want to. So you have to find other ways to do this. And the best way to do it is to go cross-axial, trying to use similar functions that you already use in a different way, in a different attitude. So changing from introverted or extroverted. So now this is where you get into your shadow work. One thing I do want to point out about this is like, when does this happen? And it's going to vary based on different types. But what I'll do is I'm going to remove this slide. I'm going to pull up a slide on development with Erikson's stages. So in Erikson's stages, he recognized that there were these 7 to 8. There's really like 8 stages, but 7 because the after 65 is the last one, and I'm not going to go into that yet. And we're also going to really skip the birth to 18 months to 3 years, and 3 to 5 years, and 5 to 12 years. We're working really in the 12 to 18 year range because at that point is probably when you get the most use out of your baseline function stack. You've already moved through the stages of early childhood development, and you are able to form an identity with your baseline function stack. Now, at some time between the ages of 18 and 40, what people are looking to do is develop a sense of intimacy with people. And then at 40 to 65, they are looking for more generativity versus stagnation. So I do think some people are going to find it easy, depending on their function stack, to develop the intimacy versus to move through the stage of intimacy versus isolation. What that means is having a safe relationship filled with commitment and love. And some people are actually going to have to tap into their shadow at this point. Now, anyone who doesn't have to tap into their shadow at this point may have to do this more so at the age range of 40 to 65, when it becomes more natural to begin generating wealth and being successful. So what we'll see here is this kind of has to do with your decision-making functions. I do think that TI and FE seem to have an easier time finding the intimacy if they want to, and will have a harder time generating if they do not actually interact with people who encourage that type of development. And just for anybody who's watching, most of my followers who are trying to generate right now should be realizing that they are in this range. They are not at the point of generativity versus stagnation. And I think a lot of people stress when they're in their 18 to 40-year-old range and they think they're not generating. It's because you have not entered the stage of your life where generating becomes easier. So when I do tell people to move into their shadow, you really want to think about, are you ready for that yet? Are you in a state? So as an INTP, I do think I looked for generativity early in my life. And now I'm kind of moving back towards the intimacy versus isolation period. So I did enter into my shadow, but I am going more towards my baseline. And I understand that come around the age of 40, there will be more growth opportunities for me to find a way to generate wealth and work on relationships more so, like provide for my relationships more so. So I've actually used this with my wife. She also has TI and FE, and we worked on her moving towards her shadow functions, opening her own business. And we did this later in our 20s, and it's helped a lot with ourselves, but neither of us are really TE or FI users. We just understood the need to go into that if we wanted to start generating. And we both agree that we have not maximized on that yet, and we understand the path of that. That's kind of what I want to show you guys with this, is that there's a path to it. And if you can't get into it right now, you can begin slowly integrating the functions that are cross-axial. So one thing is just don't think that you need to be into this 40 to 65-year-old range. Any of you who are 25 can realize you have another 25 years once you get there to begin generating your own wealth and well-being for others. And I think that's just something that you can keep in mind. I was about 21 years old when I realized this. I was working with my psychologist, and he was like, you've done so much at 21 years old that he sent me over to Erickson Stages and wanted me to realize that like there is a long time of development where all the generativity I've done is going to actually increase, and I'm going to be more suited to do it later on in life, after I've already gone through the stages that I need to go through. Because really, you cannot start generating at 40 if you haven't moved through building deep relationships with people and connecting with your community. And you can still be working on the things that you planned to focus your attention on when it comes time to generate, but you don't need to actually worry so much if you're not actually generating. That's the biggest thing I can actually tell you guys. Because if you're 30 years old, you have another 10 years to really master what you plan to be generating, kind of projecting outwards later on in life. And that's just something I wanted to share with you guys today. If anybody has any questions, I will take those. If not, I'm going to share these slides again. Just so anybody who wants to see them, they can understand that. So as an INTP, you do want to get into your ENTJ. I think how I set these up is actually how I think it's easiest to do, most common to do, but I understand that this isn't universal. Some INTPs may end up looking more like an INTJ at that 40-year mark, or ESTPs may look like an ISTJ eventually. I do think that you will even see a lot of INFJ and ENFP end up happening. I see a lot of these. I haven't seen all of these, but ISTP and ESTJ I have seen. And these are people that I've seen who were well developed, very mature in their development. They had been doing a lot in their early 20s, and come around the ages of between 30 and 40, you start seeing a change in their personality, that they have been able to pick up some of the other skills that other types are more proficient in. So that's just something that I like to remind people, that it is very dynamic in your development. There's a lot of evidence for stages of development. In general, I don't think that you can move into a stage without having completed the previous stage. Or you can't find success in the next stage, at least, if you weren't successful in the previous stage. So if you find that in one of the stages that I brought up, you may not have successfully moved through it, you can always move back through it and develop the virtues or values that you need to pick up in those stages. So if you just want a good outline of what each, so this isn't quadra, but this is horizontal and vertical quadra. So the two top quadras are focused, because they have SI and NE, are focused on structure and preserving, where the two bottom quadras are more focused on self-promotion, because they have SE and NI. Now your left quadras are focused on ideas, theories, creating harmony within the systems humans operate, because they have TI and FE, where your right quadras are focused on maintaining efficiency of time and resource, details, and specific data to get the most out of spent energy. There's some editing mistakes there, but that's okay. And that's your TE and FI that is creating that type of behavior. So that's pretty much what I have. I just wanted to share some of these slides. I am getting used to using StreamYard and being able to pull up all of these slides, which is kind of fun. If anybody has any questions, I will take those. If not, I'm going to end this stream. And I hope that it helps you. I hope that this was enough information. And if you have any questions on development specific to what I showed today, leave a comment so I can address it in a future video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.